How do you make your game space more accessible? Not just allowing people, to make it into the building, but making them feel welcome once they're there. Welcome to Gaining Advantage. Welcome to Gaining Advantage. We're using role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons to help you make lives better. Now, before we get into our announcements like we usually do, I just wanted to take a moment. There's been a lot of stuff going on right now with everything that's going on Twitter. And so this is specifically for those of you who are Dungeons & Dragons creators, writers, artists, publishers, anyone like that. I've learned a few things in the past couple of years that I've been working in the industry. And this includes talking to a lot of people that have been in it a whole lot longer than I have. And I know that with everything that's happening on Twitter right now, there's a lot of concern about what does this mean for the industry as far as creators and especially someone who's just starting out and is worried that Twitter is just going to get worse. They're not going to want to go there, and how are they going to make connections and market their products and things like that. And so I just wanted to share a little bit of information with you, maybe calm some fears, and even offer some advice that may actually help you regardless what happens on what I like to call the Angry Birds app. All right, so Twitter is a good place to connect with people. It's a terrible place for marketing. We've done a lot of studies. I've talked to a lot of people. If you're trying to sell or promote stuff, you're not really going to get a whole lot. A little bit, but not much. It's really not worth a lot of effort. All right, but it is a good place to make connections, to get to know other people in the industry. However, if you want to use it for that, and actually get your name out there as someone who wants to make money in the industry by writing, by creating artwork, by editing, or by publishing, you can do it there, and a lot of people do. But it's a lot of work, and there are easier, more effective ways to do it. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. All right, when you're on Twitter, you're trying to make connections, but it's kind of an awkward place. A lot of times the stuff that you talk about or the comments and the things you do there just kind of get buried and nobody sees them. Even when people do see them, it's a flash in the pan and then it's gone almost instantly. And even some of my more popular tweets, I might get 1% of the people that like it will turn into followers. I mean, it's not much, and so it's a very slow, difficult climb to try to make those connections. Right. So let me offer an alternative. Right, and that alternative is Discord. All right, if you get on Discord, the best place to start. Well, two things. Number one, get on Discord and join the Drive-Thru-RPG Discord. All right, there's also a private one for DMs Guild creators, and if you talk to any DMs Guild creator, you can find somebody that can help you get on there, or send me a note, and I'd be happy to help you out if you seem to be honest and legit about what you're hoping to do. They keep it private to keep the bots and things off, but it's open to just about anybody that is interested in the process. Right, and so that's the one thing. Get on those Discords and start getting to know the other people in the field. All right, they will help you out. They'll be able to answer questions for you. You also get a chance to get to know people and figure out who you want to work with, because this is just as Dungeons & Dragons is a cooperative game, so this industry is a very cooperative industry. It's very unique that way. Really, the most important thing when it comes to marketing or just success overall in all kinds of ways is cooperation with other people in the industry, other creators, and not so much competing, which is beautiful and something I really love about the industry. All right. Now, while you're doing that and getting to know people, also get some stuff out there. All right, there's a class that you can take that's very affordable, and in fact, there's also scholarships to be able to take it for free, called Write Your First Adventure. and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Take that class. I highly recommend it. Even if you have experience in writing, it tells you a lot about how to write adventures specifically for role-playing games. And there's a couple different versions of it if you want to write specifically 5th edition stuff for DM's Guild or whatever. And so you can check that out. All right. Not only will you learn some tips on there, you'll also get access to a lot of resources and just things that are really helpful to let you know what you need to keep going. All right. It's also how I found out about the DM's Guild Discord. Once you do that, start writing, start creating, create some stuff and post it. Now, the next question is, where do you post it? Before you answer that question, you need to make a decision. Are you, with your plans for how you want to establish yourself in the industry, do you want to do freelance work or do you want to be the publisher? All right. If you want to sort of make the decisions about the big projects and what they're going to look like and things like that, and you're interested in marketing and project management and all of those sorts of administrative kinds of things that go along with it, then you want to go the publisher path, right? If you say, well, no, I want to write adventures, or I want to create artwork, or or something like that, and you want other people to hire you and give you money for your work, all right, then you want to go the freelance route, right? And this makes a big difference on this next step, right? Because if you just want to be a freelancer and you want to write, especially if you want to write specifically for Dungeons and Dragons, then you're probably better off posting your stuff on the DM's Guild. It'll get a lot more exposure. You'll get more sales than you would elsewhere. And I know that I, as a publisher who writes for or who creates 5th edition materials, when I'm considering somebody or I'm looking for someone for a project, all right, I look on the DM's Guild. If they send in a freelancer application, and we have those on our website, if anyone's interested, the first place I look, if they don't submit a portfolio link with their content, and even if they do sometimes, I look on DM's Guild to see what products they have there. And because I want to see what kind of quality material are they producing. And that's the best place for me to look as a 5th edition creator and publisher. But if you want to produce for other systems, like Powered by the Apocalypse, or you want to create your own system or anything like that, then you can't put it on DM's Guild because that's 5e D&D only. And so you have to put that up on DriveThruRPG. But that's fine. Do that, right? If you want to be a publisher, if you want to make the decisions about what kind of content you're creating and putting out there, and build your, shall we say, company brand, right? Not in a sort of sterile, cold corporate kind of thing, but just to get to know people, what you're about, then you want to post your content to DriveThruRPG, all right? And the reason for that is that even though you'll actually initially make less money there, what you'll do is you'll build a customer base, because on DM's Guild, you have no way of contacting the people that get your products there. Even if you're sending out stuff for free and you want to say, hey, if you like this, you might like some other stuff. You can't do it, right? And there's no way to contact them. You can't even update the document and put a link in the document. They won't get a notification that it's been updated. And so there's no way at all to contact the people, even to let them know that you made some fixes and typos in the document, in the adventure or whatever that you created. And so if you want to be able to actually connect with your customers, whether it's because you put a $1 subclass out there and you want to let them know that you updated things, or that you have another $1 subclass, or even that you have free stuff that you're putting out there, right? If you put it up on DriveThruRPG, there is a way to actually contact, to send out emails to, usually it's about half of the people that download your things based on how they have their account settings. And so that is a great way to get started. because then you can let them know about new things you have going on. And then if you want to point them to other stuff that you're doing, like Kickstarters or stuff that you're doing on your own website or anything like that, then you can just put an extra little document in with the main PDF or whatever it is that you're posting up there that has information, that has links and stuff. You can't put the link in the document in the description, but you can put it in a file that's extra, even if it's at the end or the beginning of the adventure or whatever it is that you created. So by getting your content up there, that becomes your portfolio or your resume. If you're an artist, just putting stuff up on ArtStation or places like that is a good thing to do, just so you have stuff out there so you can show people what you can do. I also discover artists through DriveThruRPG that post stock art there. And if I find stock art where I'm looking for something in particular, and I find an artist through their stock art, and I say, wow, I really like their style, or this is the particular style that I'm looking for this project, I'll reach out to them and contact them and say, are you looking for commissions? And so that's another place I recommend put your art up if you're an artist. And you probably make a little bit of money too on it too. So then once you have your content out there, wherever you decide to put it, then you can connect with with other creators, right? There's on those Discords that I mentioned, there are a lot of open calls for writers and artists and editors and things where someone wants to do a collaborative project. And so they put a call out, and they tag writers, and they say, this is the project I want to do, and if you're interested in writing for this, then contact me. And they'll have all the information there, and creates a separate thread and stuff. But anyway, once you have your stuff out there, even if nobody's got it, but you feel like it's good quality material and just nobody happened to find it, then you can say, I'm interested in this. Here's what I've created so far. And then whoever's in charge of the project will look at it and say, and decide, and hopefully they'll say, yeah, I'd love to have you on the project. Or for that matter, if you want to start something, even if you're just doing it as a writer, you're not going the whole publisher path, but you just think it'd be fun to collaborate with some other creators and create some kind of themed collection of adventures or whatever it is, you can do that. And so it's a great way to get to know people and establish yourself. And then as you get involved in some of these collaborative projects, you get to know other people in the industry. What happens is you're building that resume, you're building those connections, and it's so much easier and more personal than it is on Twitter. And there's a much better chance that when you say something, that people are actually going to see it. So then as you continue to grow through that, all right, number one, you're going to get better at what you're doing, because you're practicing, you're learning from other people that have more experience than you, right? That have learned from their own mistakes and are happy to share what they've learned with you, are happy to answer your questions, are happy to look at your stuff and offer you advice and things like that. And so once you do that, you build that rapport, you build that catalog. Then as time goes on, if you're interested in connecting with larger publishers, then you can go to them and say, hey, I'm interested in working for you, and being considered as a writer for a future project. Now understand that the bigger the publisher, the further out they're working. And so it might be, 2 years or more before they even consider anything that you or anything you've submitted, because they already have staff lined up. I mean, I have people lined up for most of what I'm doing through the end of next year. We'll still be looking for some artists, especially, but otherwise we're pretty much set. But there will be future projects, and so I'm always looking for more people. And once in a while, someone has to drop out of a project or something like that. Something comes up, and we need to fill that slot. And so I'm always looking for people who are interested in working with us. But others, they get so many people that are interested that they're not quite as open. But the more you establish yourself, the better chance you have of connecting with those larger publishers, which, by the way, also tend to pay more. And so, if you look at it, with Twitter, you might get discovered, right? But at the same time, it's kind of like buying a lottery ticket every time you tweet. Maybe, and maybe you're not spending money on it, but you're spending your time on it. And it's time that you could be spending writing or creating artwork or whatever it is that you love to do. Right? And so instead of spending that time on Twitter and buying those lottery tickets of time and emotional investment, and yeah, the more you do, it's sort of like buying extra lottery tickets. You have a better chance of winning, but not a really big chance. Somebody wins every once in a while, but chances of hitting some big opportunity, most people, when that happens to them, they've been at it for years and they've invested a lot of time. And so, there's always exceptions. But on the other hand, if you follow that Discord path and get involved in the creation, you have a much better chance. It's just going to go faster for you. And if you have quality stuff and you're a decent human being, all right, because personality matters. Not that you have to be really outgoing or anything, but just kind and compassionate. If that's the kind of person you are, you're almost guaranteed to do well. To do at least get your name on projects and start making a little bit of money. And now making a lot of money in this industry is really hard. All right. But to be able to, and very, very few people actually get that far. But if you want to follow that path, right, you want to set up a Twitter account, post a tweet like once a week, once a month or something like that, go in, get to know people and that, fine, right? But Discord tends to be a lot healthier when it comes to just mental health because it doesn't have an algorithm that feeds on rage. And it's just easier to actually get to know people on a more personal level to understand what people are about and actually have conversations. Twitter's just not good for that. And so that's my 2 cents. And I would love your feedback. Feel free to leave a comment, send us an email, or whatever. I'd really appreciate any feedback on that. All right. So all that said, let's get into announcements. First of all, Limitless Heroics, including characters with disabilities, mental illness, neurodivergence in 5th edition. By the time you read or hear or see this, it may or may not be out. It's right there. We're just putting the last touches on it, and it may be coming out in the next day or two. There's been just some edits, last minute kinds of edits that we've been making, and things like that, accessibility issues that we've been clearing up just to make it as good as we possibly can before putting out there. And so if it's not out yet, then just invite you to join the Dragon's Horde, our email list, because we treasure you, to find out when it's available, and also we'll have some discounts available with the release, and that'll be available through our email list. Also announcing, and we'll have a discount available for you, a coloring book. We're taking the art from Limitless Heroics, and we are creating a coloring book. It's a great gift for kids or adults. I like that kind of thing for if I'm doing something like if I'm playing D&D, especially if I'm playing as a player, which I'm a forever DM, but in other situations where I want to pay attention, but I need to do something with my hands because of my ADHD, coloring books are great for that. All right, for kids, just to give them, because coloring books are fun, or just for adults because coloring books are fun. We're making a coloring book, and it features a lot of the artwork and characters from Limitless Heroics, which means that it's all about disability representation. And besides because coloring books are great, if you put this book in the hands of a child, right, and they're growing up coloring in this book, what are you doing? You instantly normalize disabled heroes in their life. All right. So when someone comes along later and says, no, disabled person can't be, a D&D character or just, a capable hero in general, right? They're, no, that's not how I see the world. Right. And so this is just a phenomenal way to connect, to communicate in a fun way with kids, to help them to just consider a disabled hero to just be like any other hero. And so we will be releasing that uh, next week, probably Monday. And the book also has quotes from a whole bunch of people that have submitted quotes to us that are coming from disabled, neurodiverse, mentally and chronically ill backgrounds, and speaking whether it's about their experiences or just things that have helped them in through their experiences, but it's all expressing their experiences and perspectives. And so because we really care about hearing from people, representation is all about letting those who you're representing communicate their experiences. And so we want to make sure to do that with this coloring book too. And so we've got a whole bunch of submitted quotes that are in there and just spread throughout the coloring book along with the pictures. And so I invite you to check that out. Again, jump on our email list, the Dragon's Horde, and you just go to our website and you'll find this sign up forms on every page in order to do that, and you'll get a discount. So now, all that said, on to the interview. Inclusion is more than offering large print captions and ramps. It's a view of the world and how you think about the infinite variety of people and experiences. Given that variety, making your game space inclusive can be daunting or seemingly impossible, but we can help each other make that possible. Today, we welcome Caleb Valorozo-Jones to help with that. Welcome, Caleb.
So sorry. Hi. Thanks for having me.
All right, so what would you like us to know about you personally, specifically speaking to the RPG crowd?
I guess I kind of want to preface that I don't consider myself a subject matter expert necessarily in TTRPGs or RPGs in general. But I think coming from a design and like research perspective, it's like a different way of looking at it. I mean, I love them. I'm not just kind of like an anthropological outsider, like looking in. I love them, but I always kind of view myself more as a player and a fan first than I do of an expert or someone who could get into the nitty gritty about the game design rules. But and obviously preaching to the choir. But I guess what I want people to know about RPGs is that they are a lot more powerful, transformative tools than people realize, and that it's a lot of opportunities for growth and world building and world imagining, and we can translate those skills from within role play games if we want to in outside of the games and into the real world.
All right, so tell us about your work in inclusive design.
Yeah, so I have a master's in inclusive design from OCAD University, which is a art design school in Canada. And I kind of went more into inclusive design as doing user experience design and user experience research, which is a lot more app focused. And I became very passionate about design because digital products are not very often designed for a plethora of people. But in the program, I became a lot more passionate and aware and kind of started going through my own journey about my own differences and disabilities. Like I'm neurodivergent. I'm autistic and I have ADHD. And started kind of meaningfully exploring that and looking at the tools and things. That's how I got into the RPG side of inclusive design. Like outside of that, it's kind of more boring technical stuff about uh, web content that I do. But RPGs is the fun part where uh, you're looking not just how the game and the content is delivered, but also how you can play the game and alter games. And I hate to use the word homebrew, but I feel like it's the closest analogy that we have, because a lot of time when people talk about homebrewing something, I'm like, you didn't homebrew, like you just designed something. Like that's what design is. Like you're a designer. Like I'm not a designer. I just made this. I'm like, no, like it's the great equalizer. You just homebrewed a whole set of rules. That's what design is, and a lot of people are homebrewing or designing their own inclusion tools, which is really awesome. And then kind of through doing my research, I got connected with different groups and different folks like Naomi Hazlitt, who I met through doing my thesis, and Naomi was a godsend and really helped with it.
So tell me more about your thesis.
Yeah, so I say thesis because it's actually a major research project, but it's essentially a thesis. It's a semantic, academic semantic, and so basically, I kind of walked into it with this theory that like through RPGs you could help develop certain skills as a neurodivergent person, um, which would improve your quality of life, so to speak. I'm not sure how familiar people are with ABA, but that's the like prototypical um, treatment for autistic people, which is quite controversial to the autistic community because it's kind of teaching you to suppress your own needs instead of advocating for them. So there's been a lot of push. Well, instead of teaching autistic people to appear less autistic or neurodivergent people to appear less neurodivergent to make other people more comfortable, why don't we teach them how to advocate for themselves and their needs? And I recognized a lot of overlap with RPG because you're basically just role playing scenarios. And like role play is, I mean, it's still used in school when you are trying to learn something, whether you're doing nursing or what have you, you're role playing different scenarios. And so it kind of grew from there into not just could you develop these skills, but realizing through some of the reading that I was doing that through mine being specifically on Dungeons and Dragons, that all these facets of our world are represented in games, but disability is not explicitly. Like people have things like the combat wheelchair, or they might say my character is blind or deaf, but there's not like a meaningful mechanic that's necessarily associated with that. And in a game where the most impact is through mechanics, I thought, well, disability should exist just as much as there's things you can't do. There are enhanced abilities from differences that you can do. It's all circumstantial, which is kind of the inclusive design lens. People are more familiar with universal design, which is designing like one thing for everybody, and there's 8 principles about it. But inclusive design is bringing in the community to help design, and also realizing that there's going to be conflicting needs for access, and addressing that and trying to make a product that can meet multiple different people, including perhaps not being one product, but being an adaptable product, so to speak. And so with that, okay, that was a lot of background. So the actual thesis itself. So I got 5 neurodivergent adults, whether they were diagnosed or self-identified, and we played a bunch of Dungeons and Dragons sessions. But before that, we did a co-design session where they designed a neurodiversity mechanic based on their own experiences. So there was ones about having special interests, and like you could stay up all night and learn everything but a certain topic, but you would have exhaustion points, or people having anxiety and panic attacks, or having to roll for a wisdom saving throw if they had to be in a very large public space, like things representing their real world experiences. And then they played 5 sessions, uh, went through the game, had certain experiences, which I write about, and then had a really great time. And they're actually still all playing. So they kept it going, which is really exciting.
That's great. I mean, that's a good sign. That means that it's that there's practical application, and it's actually helping to make that connection. It's not just theory.
Yeah. And it was really interesting. So like the impactful thing about it was, so some people really enjoyed it because they're like, well, it made me change how I thought about role playing. So that was just more fun in general, because like you might say, my character is really anxious, and you role play that, but how does that manifest in other parts of the game? So actually saying like, oh, like I have an anxiety mechanic, where if it's in a social situation, I'm going to be on disadvantage because of charisma. But if it's like a high pressure, intense fight, my anxiety kicks in, and I'm like really good in like a high stress situation, and I'll have advantage on. And it made them think about it. So people enjoy the role play aspect, but then other people really liked that it made them think about themselves differently, and kind of give some grace and some space to be like, it's very easy to kind of have like this internalized ableism about there's something wrong with me. Like we heard about like bad brain days, and it's like, well, I'm not a bad person because of this. I just need extra space. And like, with TTRPGs and RPGs, usually like you kind of have a team makeup to balance each other out. And in life, it's kind of taking that space to realize that, oh, today, like my constitution isn't so great. I need someone in my circle to like step up and help me. And so there was like some really interesting like realizations that people had.
Yeah, it's funny. Oftentimes, I think that if the more popular D&D gets, the more we can just start using mechanics language in our regular conversations, and say, "Yeah, I need a short rest right now because I need a
Literally.
few more spell points." And yeah,
And that was the funniest thing, is that it becomes kind of an easy shorthand for talking about yourself. And like one of the things that I thought was really funny, not with D&D, like with the alignment chart, not that it's like necessarily like a hardcore rule, but one of the things I thought was very funny, what they always talked about, this like introvert extrovert binary, whether you subscribe to it or not, but like some days having a more introvert day, sometimes having a more extrovert day, sometimes having an ambivert, and like it's so hard to explain to people who don't get it. And one of them just made up a alignment chart for introversion. So you're like, oh, today I'm a functioning extrovert. And it was just like the funniest thing that they kind of like took it and made their own, did the inverse of taking D&D language out, but using it as a framework to describe their experiences and taking that into it.
I love that. Now I want to design Outer Planes based on that.
Right? I was like, that's like the best way to put it. Be like, today I'm a quiet extrovert, but like I'm feeling extroverted. I don't need a long rest.
Oh yeah, so I'm just imagining, because I'm pretty solid introvert, that I'm imagining the sort of plane of extroversion, which that would be like my abyss.
It would just be like the extra like hard final boss like level area.
It's just like everyone's in your face all the time, and stuff, and it's all small talk. There's like no conversations of substance at all. And, oh man, I'm gonna have nightmares.
Everyone only talks about the weather and the big game. You don't know what the big game is. But
Right? Yeah. Yep. You're completely unfamiliar with it. Oh man. All right. What else can you tell us about your project?
I mean, there's a lot. There's kind of like the core parts of it are this idea of like three major kind of tenets that hold it up. The first one being bleed, which people are familiar with, but emancipatory bleed, which is this theory about how bleed can also help with like liberation and self-advocacy skills, like I mentioned. It's a theory from Janaya Kemper, who is an RPG anthropologist, but basically about when you're navigating an in-game oppression or in-game systems and situations like that you might actually deal with in the real world, you're developing, practicing those skills, and also experiencing a catharsis to take that outside. So that was a really interesting theory, and then also actually seeing it again, like with one player talking about the opportunity to be vulnerable. And like having these situations, being highly introverted and having anxiety. So the character having this moment where someone was short with them and it wasn't a big deal, but like actually that would have hurt and they would have thought they did something wrong. And instead of just brushing it off in real life and just getting over it, giving the space and having that cathartic moment to be vulnerable and be like, it's okay to feel this way. It's not a bad thing. You didn't do anything wrong, but you're still allowed to feel some type of way about it. And then the other big thing is a lot about safety tools and their importance to make games more accessible to people. And like there are specific safety tools, but it was also kind of just the notion of safety tools as a practice and as a continuing tool in dialogue to make people feel comfortable about advocating for their needs. Because we did a safety tool exercise before the game, the one page tool, which I really like, and it had a lot of questions like, okay, your character wants to turn evil. When should this happen? It should never happen. It should only happen after we've all discussed it. It should only happen if the DM allows it. The DM would decide. How would we handle an in-game death? Like, so to get people's comfort level. And so the sense of psychological safety that was developed by talking about it. And so like one of the really big impactful moments for me in the thesis was setting the stage for safety tools and psychological safety, that players came forward and said, the way we're playing is kind of confusing and making me anxious. Can we modify it? Because I kind of need to talk to understand what other people are thinking. So it wasn't even so much like an actual, when we think of access, we think of, like you said, wheelchair ramps, screen readers, which are important, but this was just about their communication. And he came to the group, they talked about it. And then they role played it in the game as well, in their characters being like, oh, like I'm really stressed out when they're fighting. You guys keep going in guns blazing, so to speak. And I don't know what's going on. And it stresses me out. And then they talked through it and had like a really beautiful moment. And then modified how they played. And so I think the big takeaway from that was about, like you said, inclusion being a mindset at the start. And I don't know, like people are very into like rules as written or like the game book is the Bible, but if that's how you want to play, you're going to alienate a lot of awesome players.
Yeah,
is how I feel.
To to paraphrase, the book was made for the group, not the group for the book.
Yes, that's totally it, because the same safety tools are not, and like communication techniques are not going to work between groups, because I play, with other groups, whether I DM for them or not. And it's so different. And even if you rewrite the book, so to speak, to make it work for a group, it's not made for that group. The group was made differently.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and it's so much of that, and I keep seeing this over and over. Just the whole the culture of open communication of the kind of the idea that your feelings, your needs matter, and so it's important that the environment be such that you can communicate those needs. Because I see so often I'll see online posts where people say, "I'm having this problem with the player, I'm having this problem with the DM or whatever," and like, what do I do? And like, the answer every time is talk to
Talk to
them,
them.
right? But the thing is, that's not always, usually if they're coming, to some online forum somewhere where they're asking this question, it means the communication has broken down somewhere,
Mhm.
or maybe was never, there in the first place. And so yes, the answer is talk to them, but it's before that, the sort of step back, sort of session -1 is to have a culture in the first place where people can talk about it and feel comfortable with that, and not feel like there's going to be some kind of backlash, or that they're not important, or something like that.
Yeah, um, and that's, like, a huge thing to overcome. Like, I mean, obviously, communication is, like, probably one of the most important skills people develop, and also the hardest thing that people
Mhm.
always mess up, somehow. But it was like, I don't know, because it would be so interesting to the exact same, like, project that I did with a different group. It might not work. Like, it's so much about the people themselves, and I always say all research is only ever about the people that you're doing it on. So you can't extrapolate it to all people, whether that's a small study of 5 people or a big study of 500 people. It can tell you some things that you can learn from it and some possibilities of things that you observe. But I feel like if you can overcome that fear of being vulnerable, so to speak, to discuss uh, your needs um, in a game as a player or as a DM, that it can help a lot. Because that was the thing that in the group they said it was a lot easy going into the space, a lot easier because they knew everyone in the group was neurodivergent. So they were going to be a little different, so to speak. Because, like, I don't know, I think they're obviously it's a huge overlap in RPG gamers and neurodivergent community, um, in my experience at least. And but they kind of knew going in it wasn't going to be a certain type of negative experience they had before in previous games, with people being ableist or other istinisms. Um, so there was a sense of comfort there, but not only knowing that they were neurodivergent, but talking about it, because there was some, like, probing group questions in our co-design session about Dungeons and Dragons. Like, we did what's called a rose bud thorn, which is like a co-design activity where we talk about a rose, so something good, a bud, something that could be improved, and a thorn. Um, and I expected it to be a lot more stuff about the game and the rules itself, which there was, but a lot of it was like their interpersonal experiences and not like feeling accepted into a group. Um, but talking through that and being like, well, I was with this DM and he was really sexist and that made it a really bad experience, or whatever. Talking about it and experiences they had that were negative and feeling misunderstood, they really bonded and were able to be vulnerable in their future. So it was, um, I think, really impactful to the process of fostering those conversations. So it's like you said, it's like setting a foundation as a group. Um, I know some people just want to have a game and go and not interact, which is fine. But I think it's a lot easier when there is um, some underlying trust built.
Yeah, absolutely. Because then you when you can trust the players, then it's easier to trust the characters. Your characters are going to bond when the players bond better, and when the when you don't have to worry about, okay, well, what if my character makes this move, what's going to happen, or how are people going to react to it, and what if I mess up. We were playing one time, and there was a giant spider, and the sort of tour guide, the commoner, that was right by it, and the giant spider is going after the commoner, and so one of the guys goes, I thunderwave the spider. Well, that took care of the spider, but it also killed the commoner that he was trying to rescue. He felt terrible about it, but we kind of we dealt with it, in the story and stuff, and and worked through it, and that. But it was like, yeah, oops, but like, well, things happen, and sometimes actions have unintended consequences, but we still, everyone supports each other, uh and so we just keep going, and it's all right, and no one's gonna get on your case about it or anything, and so, yeah, when you have an environment where you know that, okay, you are valued here for who you are, and we're just gonna accept you wherever you're at, then it just it changes the dynamic of the game.
And the safety to fail, like, when you in general with RPGs, like, there's a safety to fail because there's not, like, you're not gonna kill a commoner in real life and get,
Right.
25 to life. There's a safety to fail, but when you have that safety to fail with your group, it's a whole other difference. I know one of the things that came up a lot in the co-design and the session was the talk of metagaming, which um, people really don't like. For people have different preferences, but I think as the group kind of got more comfortable, I don't know, there wasn't like necessarily metagaming. There was like a little bit of degree, but as they got more comfortable and had that safety to fail, that it's okay to make a mistake, and they didn't have to feel like they were letting down their party, so to speak. Um, since sorry, I'm like struggling to find this train of thought.
Sure.
um,
No, it's a game. But,
yeah, it's a
when it comes
game.
down to it, it's a game. It's about having fun. It's not, yeah, you have a goal and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you're there to have fun. You're not there to, solve the world's problems. And
Mhm.
in the in the midst of it, you may learn something that helps you make the world better. But at the same time, it's not, at the end of the day, you can say, well, okay, that didn't work out. Let's do a different adventure, or even, hey, let's do this adventure again, and make different choices this time. Like, you could
Yeah.
do that.
Well, and that's the thing I think about the soft skills, so to speak, that you develop in D&D are so important because obviously there's like math, because dice, um, and other like hard skills. But talking about how to solve a problem is ultimately going to be like uh, i- more beneficial than whatever problem or puzzle or monster you solve or defeat. Um, and like you said, try again next time. It's not. It might be the end of a world, a fictional world, but it's not the end of the world.
Yep. All right. So you just rescued a genie from the hands of an Ifriti, and it offers you 3 wishes to achieve your goals to make the world better. What do you wish for?
I feel like this is the hardest question. My first instinct is to say like, well, like all the prejudice isms are gone, but I feel like that is like a very baseline. I think there's like very actionable things that I could wish for, like um international universal basic income and universal health care, as well as the prejudice isms being on all the and phobias. And then I feel like lastly, like I just feel everyone should have just a really good hobby. It can change, but I feel a lot of people don't necessarily get enough of a chance to explore hobbies, obviously, because they don't necessarily have enough healthcare or universal basic income. But I like personally, one of the very transformative things about doing my thesis was realizing how much I wasn't making space for hobbies. It's a lot easier when your homework is to sit in on a D&D session every week for a month. But when you realize like, oh, if I never do a hobby until I'm done my work, well, there's always going to be more work. Um, so I think taking time to like meaningfully do a hobby, or whether it's a game or carpentry or crochet, everyone gets time and funds to do hobbies.
Yeah. No, that's so important, and the reality is that I feel really called out right now, and ironically, because my work is D&D, that it's easy to turn what a hobby that turned into a job, to make it not a hobby, and
Hugely.
so it's this one of those things that you can be, even if you love whatever your sort of your job, your career, or whatever, that you need downtime, and
Mhm.
and I'm I know I'm terrible at the whole self care thing. Thankfully, in my case, my wife will say, "Hey, spend some time with me," and like that's my favorite thing in the world. So it's like, oh, okay, yeah, and it's like, oh, well, I got to get this done. Okay, but oh yeah, all right. So
But
you wouldn't think that it would take that much convincing, but it's
sometimes
just
it does. I'm
yeah.
I'm the same way. My husband's also the same way. So we're kind of like taking turns being like, we need to spend some time together. Stop working so much.
Mm, yeah. All right. So, what one message would you like to give to neurodiverse gamers?
I want to say rules are made to be broken. Even though that's such a cliche, and I kind of like threw up a little bit in my mouth saying it, but like screw all the rules or conventions about how you are supposed to play any RPG. Create a table where rules are meant to be broken, and change the rules so that they work for you and your brain on any given day. Because um, neurodivergence is going to fluctuate about how you feel and how you can do certain activities, and it's okay to change the rules on a session to session basis if everyone's having fun. Do safety tools, break this like convention of like you have to play in a specific way um, all the time. And uh, I guess it's like 10 things I'm saying. Rules are meant to be broken, and break them consensually.
Well, I like that. I like it. Break them consensually. Yeah. All right. So, what one message would you like to give to neurotypical gamers?
I guess the flip side of that be like help people break rules. Um, I find even myself, whether it's in an RPG or another setting, it's so scary to ask people to do things differently than they have. And especially when you couch it in the language of accommodations, people hate accommodations, but people love things that are technically accommodations. People love glasses. That is an accommodation for a disability, but people don't like to think of it that way because disability is the bad word, quote, quote. It's not, but help people break rules, and help people think of how to break rules, whether that's just changing something. I think that's the best thing is that neurotypical and able-bodied gamers, not just in games but also in the gaming community for conventions and events and everything, really need to like show up and help people break rules and modify um, our little microcosms of society and our game tables to then translate that to the wider world.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. So, yeah, obviously you're working on this this big project. Is there anything else that you're working on right now that you want to talk about?
Nothing huge. Like right now, I'm kind of taking a little like break after finishing my master's and kind of figuring out the next step. I do kind of want to do a follow up and a part two and uh, a living. I want it to kind of be a living document of like where neurodivergent people could come in and add their tools, and it could have like a million appendices. But it's nothing in the works. It's kind of just like it's ruminating in my brain to do that. So nothing. It's like the twinkle in my eye of a project.
Okay, so we will have all your contact information in our show notes, but where is the one best place that you'd like people to start to learn more about you or to contact you?
Probably Twitter. I'm queer nerd without vowels, so QRNRD on Twitter. And I have my like link in my bio to all my other stuff, and I link to my thesis there and talk about podcasts or games or things that I'm guesting on there. So I'm everywhere you can find queers and nerds on the internet, but Twitter is probably my central locale.
All right. Well, Caleb, thanks so much for coming on the show. Everyone, check out those links in the show notes.
Thank you so much for having me.
I just want a big shout out to all of our patrons that help us on a monthly basis to do what we do, and want to let you know that everyone who even backs us at the $3 a month level gets access to the Dragon's Lair, which gives you access to almost all of the content that we create, and in a modular format that makes it really easy to work with, to use. And so I invite you to check that out. And we have a link to the Dragon's Lair in the show notes. And so this month, a big shout out to John. Thank you so much for coming and supporting us. So if you see the show being helpful, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more, subscribe. If you know people that need to hear this, pass it on to them. And if you, like me, think that everybody needs to hear this, pass it on to your social media friends. And don't forget those podcast ratings. Thanks so much for joining us to make lives better with D&D. And so we close with this question. What do you do to make your party as diverse as possible?